Hey there, I'm the animator behind Chipflake, a YouTube channel that is all about this cat, and also sometimes about me, but in the form of this cat. The Chipflake lore is vast and complex. However, no matter what type of content I'm making, I will always be haunted by this one question that over the course of my channel, I've been asked literally tens of thousands of times. Are you a boy or a girl? Now, I'm going to put aside the kind of worrying implication that is the suggestion that these are the only two possibilities that someone can be, aside for a second, and give you a plain and simple answer to this question. I'm a boy. Well, more specifically, a man, considering I'm an adult. I know some of you will be satisfied by that answer, but others won't. And while I do think those people should evaluate why they care so much, I do think that this is a pretty good opportunity to talk about some things that I think are kinda important and I'd like you guys to know. Just a fair warning that in this video I'm going to expose things about myself that might be kind of weird to just casually tell a bunch of strangers you've never met. Obviously I'm not going to go into too much detail because I still want this video to be accessible, but if just the mention of any of these things makes you uneasy, don't feel bad about skipping this one. It's just that I feel like this stuff is kind of important to my story, and I'm tired of hiding things that could be useful to someone figuring out themselves just because humans decided that certain topics are weird to talk about for some reason. So the thing is, I didn't always know that I'm a man, but this is where it gets a little complicated because I didn't exactly have this one moment where I just had an epiphany and everything changed. Instead, it was more like several different aspects of my life coming together. So instead of telling you a story in chronological order, I'm going to split this video up into different parts just to focus on these aspects individually, and I hope that doesn't get confusing. Part 1. YouTube. I started this channel at the beginning of 2017 at 19 years old. I know for a lot of big YouTubers, their channel started off as a hobby that just happened to blow up and turn into a job opportunity for them. Personally, I've always intended and hoped for this channel to succeed and become my job. I was severely depressed and could barely even bring myself to attend my one college class 3 times a week. The art commissions I was doing on the side were painfully unsuccessful, but the thought of dealing with customers made me extremely anxious anyway. So YouTube, being something I actually enjoyed, wouldn't have to leave the house for, where I could pretty much choose my own working hours, seemed at least feasible as a job for me. In this world where you must get a job and earn money, or die, I guess, I was still considering what kind of content exactly I wanted to make when the storytime animation genre started to gain traction, where people would talk or tell stories using artwork instead of a camera, which of course seemed perfect for me as someone who never liked showing their face and already loved to animate as a hobby since I was about 12 years old. So then I just needed a character. I decided on a cat as I've always loved animals, and at the time I didn't see anyone else using an animal as their storytime cartoon persona, so it would set me apart a bit. And I also decided that I wanted the design to look androgynous, so that as many people as possible could relate to them. I worked on growing my channel over the following months, and eventually my audience grew from just my friends as new people began to find my channel. And that's when something happened. Suddenly, for the first time, I was starting to experience frequently being perceived as something other than a girl. I started getting comments where people would call me they or he, and of course the famous "are you a boy or a girl" questions popped up several times every time I posted a video. And I didn't answer them. And I didn't correct anyone who didn't call me she. I specifically did not want to. You would think this would be the moment where I would stop and consider, why do I feel like I don't want to correct people who are perceiving me wrong? But no, I did not. You see, back in 2017, I was extremely ignorant about, well, anything to do with gender really. Not only had I learned extremely little about LGBT people in general from school, but back then there was a popular subgenre on YouTube entirely dedicated to tearing down arguments for women's rights and the concept of gender outside the binary man and woman, among other progressive things. And unfortunately, as a lonely, misunderstood, not like other girls 19-year-old, I was pretty deep into it. My knowledge of transgender people at that point was that they were people who knew since they were a child that they were trapped in the wrong body, and they would do anything to be seen as the opposite gender because their body brings them so much pain. And if that wasn't your exact experience, well, then you're just not trans. So no, I wasn't going to question it. There was nothing to question. If I was trans, I would know it already. It would still be a long time before I would actually start to question it, but at least within that time my opinion on gender changed as I became more knowledgeable about it. And all it really took was for me to actually listen to a non-binary person's perspective when a YouTuber I watched invited them onto their channel for a debate. I guess at some point I realized that it's not my place to decide how someone else actually feels. When someone has a headache, we don't demand brain scans to prove it. We just believe them and support them if needed. People don't just choose their identities for fun, especially when they often lose privileges, respect, or even friends and family because of who they are. And eventually, after listening to the perspectives of more and more people, I finally faced the fact that I actually related to them a lot. Sometimes I feel a little embarrassed and kind of freaked out thinking about how easily I was drawn into misinformation on YouTube, and how it took other YouTubers for me to realize that I needed to be more skeptical about the things I was being told. But honestly, I was still essentially a teenager. YouTube was my main source of entertainment and information, as it is for many young people today. I wasn't talking to my friends, family, and teachers about this stuff. While YouTubers were the reason I was led down the wrong path, other YouTubers were also the reason why I got out of it. That's why it's important to me to make this video and go into stupid amounts of detail, because YouTube is a really important resource for hearing other people's stories that you might otherwise never have the chance to hear. It's a bit weird to say out loud that YouTube has played such a big role in me figuring out who I am, but honestly, it makes sense that my biggest form of media consumption would be where I learned about things that I've never heard about before. You just always need to keep in mind that if you want to know about a group of people, you should get your information from actual people within that group, and not just random people who have nothing to do with them, using them for content. That's the double-edged sword of YouTube. While a lot of people want to spread knowledge and useful information, it is still a job for most of us. And sometimes people will say things they don't even believe to get that paycheck. While we're on the subject, it is kind of ridiculous how much misinformation has been spread about me in my own comment sections. I've joked about this in videos before, but it genuinely happens so often that somebody asks a question and some rando responds with some completely false information and nobody questioned it. And it kind of messed me up while I was questioning my identity, because even though I was making the decisions about what information about me was out there, I still didn't have control over how people saw me, as if these randos on the internet had the choice of who I am. So I guess all I'm saying is, please either get your information straight from the source, or make sure the person giving you the information can verify exactly where they got it from. Part 2. Furries. The second contender for the most asked question in my comments section is probably, are you a furry? A question which anyone who has an animal as a persona on YouTube is going to have to deal with. If you find yourself already cringing at the mention of this topic, maybe skip this video if it's too much for you to handle. But it's genuinely an important part of my story, and some of you may already have an idea as to why. Side note, get used to the way I say furry. Usually British people would say furry, but I've always pronounced the adjective furry and the noun furry. I don't know why, but it's too late to go back now. As a quick rundown so we're all on the same page, a furry is someone who's part of a fandom, similar to how Star Trek fans are called Trekkies. Except instead of being fans of a particular TV show, furries are basically just fans of cartoon animals with human-like characteristics like walking and talking. Yeah, it's pretty weird that a whole fandom was born just from a concept. It's as if there would be a fandom about the colour orange, but here we are. Something most furries do is create a persona, an animal character for yourself to use online. It's kind of like a self-insert original character, but not tied to the rules of any TV show or whatever, so there's essentially endless possibilities. The only requirement is it being in some way an animal. I know you can most definitely see where this is going. I do have to say though that Chip is not actually my persona. I know this kind of goes against what I just said. This is where it gets a bit complicated, because everyone kind of has a different definition for the word. Basically, to me, just like how you can like cartoon animals and not be a furry, if you make an anthropomorphic character without the intention of it being a persona, then it's not one. The reason I don't consider Chip a persona ties back to what I said in part 1 about me starting my YouTube channel with the intention of turning it into a job. Chip was designed to be appealing to you guys. He is in a lot of ways similar to me, but his purpose of being a character for YouTube was the main factor influencing his design, rather than my ideal image of how I want people to see me. So basically, by definition, Chip is technically a furry character, but since he was created without the furry fandom in mind at all, really, you could consider him kind of similar to Bugs Bunny, in that he's appealing to furries, but not specifically intended for them. So, just like watching Looney Tunes doesn't make you a furry, neither does watching my content, if that's something you were worried about. While my channel is, and always will be, intended for anyone to enjoy, behind the scenes I'm actually pretty involved with the furry fandom, and probably the biggest reason for this, aside from it just being a fun hobby, is its ties to identity. I actually have about 5 different personas. They're kinda different versions of me in a way. It's honestly just really fun to explore who you are in the form of a cartoon character. It is a big fan of character design. I really enjoy experimenting with different colours and species and stuff. I won't really talk about the others in this video since they're not really that relevant to the story, but I'd consider my main sona to be Ryan. I designed him back in 2017. He's a husky with big sharp canines and I guess a mohawk. Don't ask why I chose anything about his design. This is the difference between him and Chip. Pretty much everything about Chip has a reason, but this guy was literally just designed based on what I thought looks cool. Honestly though, Ryan wasn't actually created to be my sona. He was just a regular character I designed for fun, but I very quickly fell in love with him. I started drawing him more often, and at some point I realised, damn, I wanna be him. This dog man right here, I wish that were me. He's just so cool, and confident, and masculine. Around this time, I knew that I didn't really feel like a woman, but I didn't feel like a man either. So I was like, I guess I'm somewhere in the middle. But this was the first time, instead of worrying about what I feel like, I was thinking about what I want to be. An anthro dog. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if this sounds kind of weird, but as someone who's always kind of lived based on what everyone else around me wants or expects from me, I honestly rarely thought about what I want, who I want to be, and what I want from life. But the whole furry fandom thing was just kind of my own little thing. No one I know IRL is really involved with the fandom, so it was just kind of a way for me to explore myself without any input from people whose opinions I care too much about. I mentioned earlier that I have 5 different sonas, and they're all different versions of me. Some are more accurate to who I am IRL, whereas others are totally different. Ryan is a lot more confident and outgoing than I am, and probably ever will be, to be honest. He's really a super idealized version of me, and essentially has no flaws. And while I do strive to be more like him, it's mostly just fun to have a character like this. I'm not aiming to become exactly like him. Maybe I'll talk about my other characters in a video some other time. They're not really a secret or anything, but they are pretty personal to me, and I'm not sure I want to introduce them onto this channel just yet. Sorry. So, with its heavy ties to identity, as you can probably imagine, the furry fandom is very LGBT. There's honestly a lot of furries who've had a similar experience to me and discovered their identity through experimenting with crafting a personal representation of themselves online. And I just love how I can speak to a group of furries and be like, yeah, I'm a guy, and they're just like, okay. Meanwhile, people in other communities start acting really weird around me because they just can't wrap their head around person with high voice is man. Furries just don't care, they're so chill. And that's the story of how being a dog online helped me discover who I really am. Part 3. Sexuality. I can't think of a time where I ever actually disliked LGBT people. However, I was definitely influenced to think that being one of these things would be not good. I remember learning about acceptance of different identities in school. There were even these little "some people are gay, get over it" stickers on the bulletin boards in the hallways, but gay was still an insult. It was a word used synonymous with bad. Masculine girls and feminine boys were relentlessly bullied and called slurs. If you had any indication that you might not be straight, whether true or not, you could say goodbye to ever enjoying going to school again. I don't know what it's like for you guys who are in school right now. I really, really hope it's different. I know a couple of my old classmates who are nowadays happily out as gay, but back then it was either be straight or lock yourself deep in the closet as possible and throw away the key. As someone who then thought I was a girl who liked boys, I didn't even consider that I might also like girls, despite thinking several girls in my class were very pretty, getting butterflies around them, and really, really, really wanting to be their friend. It is still incredibly hilarious to me how this changed when I got to college. Suddenly, nobody cares. Like, literally my entire art class was gay. And once my subconscious ban on being gay was lifted by the fact that nobody gives a shit anymore, I realised what my internet history should have told me this entire time. I am bisexual. With this came the realisation that I don't want to be those pretty girls in my class. I wanted to date them. And this is the struggle of being bi and also trans. Sometimes you really don't know if you want to look like someone or look at them. It's really weird and I don't know how to describe it, but I would stand in front of a mirror and be like, I'm hot, but also I hate how I look. Cause like, I had the exact body type that I found attractive in women. So there was this really weird disconnect between objectively I think I look good, but something is off. Of course I didn't question it. I'm sure you've picked up on the common theme of not questioning things by now. But in this case, being raised as a girl, you are kind of taught that it's normal to hate your body. Every woman does. Every woman wants to look like hotter women. Which is not true, by the way, in case you were wondering. But for me, it was like, there was no goal. I wasn't really as skinny as what was considered the stereotypically ideal body type, but I wasn't interested in aiming for that. Like, I didn't care about wearing makeup and pretty clothes. I wasn't happy, but I couldn't picture anything that would make me happy. Of course, it didn't click for me until much later that although I looked good, this was just not what I was supposed to look like. Nowadays, I can confidently tell the difference between what I find attractive and what I want to look like. But thanks to denial, it took me a very long time to figure that out. It's still interesting how all these things are connected. I mean, that's why the T is still part of the main acronym, despite the others being sexualities. But yeah, that's how I figured out I was bi, and how it kind of made figuring out my gender more complicated. Part 4. Anxiety. Most of you probably know by now, it's not exactly a secret that I have an anxiety disorder. But it has taken me a long time to accept that it affects nearly every aspect of my life quite severely, including discovering and accepting who I am. This anxiety comes from my pretty significant lack of self-esteem. I don't have confidence or trust in myself, so as a result, my brain is more cautious and defensive than it needs to be, triggering flight responses even in completely unnecessary circumstances. Because of this, I've always taken kind of a side character role in life, trying to support others and be what they want me to be, rather than deciding for myself. I measured my worth based on my usefulness to others. So when I realized that I might not be the person that everyone around me expected me to be, that kind of messed me up. Everyone always says, be yourself. The people who are worth your time will support you no matter what, and those who don't deserve you anyway. And I completely agree with that. But as someone who based their entire life around what other people thought of me, the thought that I might upset or disappoint them totally consumed me, and I fell into a very heavy state of depression and denial. I tried so hard to force these feelings out of my head, but those feelings of euphoria fought harder. Some of you might have been under the impression up until this point that I'm non-binary and go by they-them pronouns. That's because I did for a while. For those who don't know, non-binary in terms of gender means, to put it simply, not a man or a woman. That also includes being a mix of both or being neither. Personally, I considered myself right in the middle. That's because, to be honest, identifying as non-binary was kind of like a compromise to me. It was a way for me to experience the euphoria of not being seen as a girl in a way that wouldn't bother the people around me, by expecting them to make an effort to change how they see and treated me. I had any pronouns in my bio, not because I liked all of these pronouns equally, but so that other people wouldn't have to worry about using the wrong ones. This feeling of needing to live up to other people's expectations and bother as few people as possible is something I still struggle with a lot today, to be honest. But it's something I'm working on. Over the past year or so, I've been trying to focus on myself more and trying to allow myself to do things that I actually want to do and make decisions for myself, which has allowed me to realize that I want to be a guy. If no one else was around me to influence me in any way, if I lived on a desert island all by myself, this is what I would want to be. And then there's the next big hurdle of telling everyone that I'm so afraid of losing. Unfortunately, my anxiety didn't just fizzle away once I realized I'm trans. Even after successfully crawling out of the denial phase, it still took me literal years to come out to everyone who needed to know. That's why my identity online was always kind of vague. While I could kind of sneakily imply it, I still had one foot in the closet keeping me from being completely open about it. It was just so hard to ignore this feeling that I'm going to lose everyone I care about. My brain is just so painfully pessimistic that I was too afraid to come out to even my most progressive and accepting family members. But I'm just really tired of feeling like I'm not really living and wasting my life away being chained down by what about them. I just needed to accept that if anyone didn't accept me, then it's time to let them go. And that might be painful, but it's a temporary pain that can be replaced with people who are supportive and do care. I had two options. Either continue playing pretend and be unhappy for the rest of my life for the sake of a few people, or risk losing them, be able to live the life I want to live, and have the chance to be happy. And I deserve to be happy. Part 5. Conclusion that was supposed to be short, but it turned out kind of long, so it's more like a fifth part of stuff that didn't fit into the other parts. Okay, I feel like this is pretty obvious, but since this is YouTube, I have to clarify anyway. All of this is just from my experience, from my perspective. For example, please don't take my experience identifying as non-binary as kind of a phase, and assume this is how it is for everybody. Actual non-binary people who are completely confident and comfortable in their identity exist, and I wholeheartedly support them. And if you don't, honestly, please just leave my community. If it wasn't for non-binary people being so open and accepting, I would probably still be trying to force myself to live as a girl, and not understanding what was wrong with me. During my time identifying as non-binary, I experienced so much hate and dismissal, it was ridiculous. So please show them respect and support where you can, because they really deserve it. So I know I could technically have just never mentioned I'm trans, let my hormone therapy take its course, and eventually everyone would just stop asking me about my gender and treat me like a dude. In making this video, I'm opening myself up to a lot more hate and just stupid comments in general. Pretty epic, but back when I was struggling, I just feel like this is the kind of video that would have really helped me out, you know? So I hope you could gain something from this video, whether you figured out something about yourself, learned something new, or it was just an interesting story. Finally, I just wanted to mention that I started hormone therapy about a month ago as of the time of recording this. That means that my voice is most likely going to change. So I'd like to politely request that you be respectful about that. I know a lot of you like my voice, and I appreciate all the nice comments I get about it, but please remember that I'm not a cartoon character getting a new voice actor. Whether you prefer my old or new voice is not something to debate about in the comments. I don't exist or make decisions based solely on entertaining you, and I'm still a real person at the end of the day. By the way, if you're new here, if this happens to be the first video you've ever seen from me, I unfortunately have to disappoint you because this is not my usual style of content. Usually I make cartoons about cats. Well, it's not completely off the table, as I do enjoy making videos like this once in a while. I don't really have a drive to make LGBT-focused content, so please don't subscribe if that's what you're expecting. So I decided to re-record this last bit because I wasn't 100% happy with how it came out. Plus I have something really cool to show you. Basically, I just wanted to say thank you for supporting me. Even just watching and liking my videos really helps me out. But if you really want to support me further, I've actually been working really hard for the last few months on relaunching my online shop. I'm working with a new provider now, all of the stuff is really high quality, and they've helped me to come up with some really cool ideas. Because I've just been really wanting to make more than just your standard merch. One of these things is I made a calendar. I'm honestly really happy with how this came out. It's so cool. I'm not gonna spoil what the pages look like right now, but you can find more information as well as order one if you want, as well as my other stuff at chipflake.shop as usual. And see some of the other stuff that I've been working on. So I hope you like it. So I don't think I will have hit 1 million subscribers by the time I'm posting this video, but either way, I'm pretty dang close. Way closer than I ever expected to be. So thank you for that. I still can't believe it. I'm bad at ending videos like this. Thank you again for supporting me. I hope you have a great day.